Ryback versus Batista. Who is the better wrestler? What is up, guys? Welcome back to ReviewSpace, and yes, for the past several months, everybody's been comparing, including myself, Ryback against Goldberg, who is obviously his most comparable, closest related wrestler, because of course they lifted the Goldberg style gimmick and the, that beast monster destroyer, and they took and borrowed a lot of elements from that character, and I understand that. I can see why everybody compares the two. But as far as comparing another monster to Ryback, let's talk about Dave Batista. Batista was sort of in that same category of a big, muscular, I guess a power wrestler, where he would overpower and he can actually use his strength against his opponents and kind of seem convincing about it. Somebody who could dominate. And I think Batista is probably a little bit underrated as far as being that guy. I'm not gonna say that he was, maybe the most legit, fastest, most technically sound wrestler, because he's not. But I think from a marketing point of view, from a convincing tough guy in the WWE, Batista was fairly successful. I mean, this guy was part of Evolution, and he was like the muscle of Evolution. Along with, Randy Orton, Triple H, and Ric Flair, he was that big guy. I mean, so you have this former world champion, Batista, former WWE champion. He was pushed pretty good. 2005, I think all of us will say that that was his peak, his highest point in his career in terms of being pushed. I'm not saying in terms of quality, as far as an overall character. I would probably say when he turned heel and he was feuding against John Cena, that was probably his biggest, most impactful run, at least his most entertaining in my opinion. Now in 2005, that was his biggest push. He battled against Triple H, he broke away from Evolution, and he did his own thing, won the championship, world title at WrestleMania 21. That was a big moment. He was WWE Raw's face. It wasn't John Cena. John Cena was SmackDown. He was the secondary champion. And then Batista became this top guy, and he beat Triple H continuously in the following pay-per-views. And so he held the championship for a pretty long time, and then he relinquished the belt because of some sort of injury. There was a time when Batista was very animal dominant, and I would say that was his time in 2005 when he was getting that push. Ryback kind of has a similar thing, except he's a solo wrestler. He doesn't need a faction to sort of put him over, whereas Batista he had Evolution behind his back, and then they basically used Evolution to get him over. And Triple H, of course, in that whole feud. There were a few times when Batista would just completely annihilate his opponents. Like, I remember when he went up against, what is it, those French guys, those French-Canadian guys, Rene Dupree and I think Sylvain, and he basically destroyed them. They acted like the jobbers, and he completely demolished them, and he actually shoved I think it was the French-Canadian flag, I think it was the Quebec flag, right up their butts. Like, he planted the flag when they were both down and out. He gave both of them the power bomb, or the Batista bomb. Alright, so let's talk about the finishing moves for that matter. Batista has the Batista bomb, of course. It's basically just a sit-out power bomb. Pretty basic. But it is fairly devastating as far as a guy of his size, a monster like Batista. Ryback has, what is this move? It's a Samoan drop, I guess. It's a glorified Samoan drop. What did they call it? I forgot what it was called. I can't believe I'm forgetting it. I'm blanking out as of this moment. The Devastator, the Annihilator, the shellshock. There you go. I'm sorry, the shellshock. I completely forgot. I think that's the main problem with Ryback, is that Batista has a better finishing move. Yeah, I think the Batista bomb is better because it is a power bomb. Power bombs have always been more convincing. They've always been more impactful. I like them more. They just have more pizzazz to them. I think a Samoan drop, it's just not a good finisher. I think maybe Ryback could use a different finisher. Maybe even a spear or something, you know what I mean? I mean, Batista used the spear. Batista would even sometimes use the spear as a finishing move. Granted, Batista's spear wasn't that good. It actually wasn't very well executed. I thought it was kind of soft looking, you know? He would just kind of, I don't like, kind of jump in the air and fall down with his opponent. You know, it wasn't that good looking of a spear. I think all of us can say that Goldberg had the best spear, but as far as comparing Ryback to Batista, it's a little bit closer, especially when it comes to physical ability. I think that Ryback and Batista can sort of have the same level of athletic ability, the same level of physical talent. I think Goldberg was a little bit more skillful than those two, but that's what WWE is looking for. Guys who can sort of utilize their strength and just kind of have a basic moveset of, here's a couple of power moves, you know, here's a clothesline or a spear or what have you, and that's pretty much it. Now, both guys have a tremendous look. Both guys have incredibly muscular physiques. I would say that Batista actually has a better physique. He actually doesn't have to wear a singlet to cover up his stomach. I don't know what's going on with Ryback's stomach. I don't know if it's like well defined, there's enough abs in there, because usually when somebody doesn't have a lot of abs, or maybe it's not as a little bit softer looking, like maybe a Kurt Angle, then they have to wear a singlet. You know, like Jack Swagger is another good example, a singlet, where maybe they don't have a huge, muscular, ripped physique. They're not ripped, I should say. Batista was ripped, and he had all these veins poking out. He was very roided up, you know, roidtista, as they say. But as far as Ryback looks a little bit more, well, I'm sure he's on something, some kind of supplement, but he does look a little bit more, I guess, natural because of the singlet. For some reason, when you wear a singlet, you look more like a wrestler to me. An amateur wrestler, rather. Like a Kurt Angle, or a Jack Swagger, or somebody like that, who has some sort of... They look more amateurish, you know, and that's not a bad thing. It's just more like, whoa, this guy looks like a wrestler, like a wrestler. So, as far as appearance, it's a little bit close. Batista has more muscle and more definition. Ryback is a bit more of a real wrestler-looking type of character. This one's a little bit tough. Because Ryback is shaved, and then, you know, on the other hand, Batista shaved his head too, at one point or another. Actually, he shaved it a couple of times. The shaved wrestler look does get a little bit old for me. It's a little bit tedious. I understand it, you know what I mean? It looks like a, you know, a warrior, you know, people who shave their heads, you know, soldiers. You know, soldiers who go to war shave their heads, you know what I mean? It's a very warlike haircut or lack of hair, you know, to have no hair, because that's the thing, in battle you shave your hair so that the opponents can't grab onto it and it doesn't get caught up in the battle. And it's just been a long tradition of centuries of having a shaved head when you go into battle. So I understand that look. Kratos from God of War is a perfect example. That shaved, you know, that skinhead look, you know, and I don't mean skinhead like Nazis or anything, but just the haircut itself. So overall, you know, moveset and in terms of appearance, I would probably give it a little bit to Batista, but it's pretty close. I think that Skip Sheffield or Ryback has pretty good moves too. I think he's got enough athleticism to make it. Right now, I would just prefer Batista, especially because he cut more promos and he developed a more interesting character, especially that heel character. Ryback has a really good future in which he can actually go in different directions. He can be a promo guy. He can be the silent, quiet, mean demeanor about him. It's just like, wow, this guy's imposing in a quiet way. Overall, I think Batista wins just by default because he's accomplished more. He has a better finisher, he has a more chiseled look, and he looks more like just an overall marketable wrestler. Ryback is good too. I would say Ryback needs a bit more time to develop. Maybe give him another year, a year or two to fully develop his character and become a little bit more interesting and have interesting feuds and maybe add something to his appearance, his look. That's just my opinion. So overall, right now, I'd say Batista beats Ryback, but that's just, my thoughts. Thank you for watching. Until next time, ciao.